Hello. In this clip from our Justia webinar, your bar license is trapped in the 20th century, or is it? Multi-jurisdictional rules and proposed changes. Charity Anastasio and Micah Bookdahl offer some tips about the role of reciprocity within the multi-jurisdictional practice rules, the unauthorized practice of law, and how it can help your law firm development. If you want to see more Justia videos on law practice and legal marketing, be sure to subscribe to our channel.
So, when I talk about, MJP and UPL, it's always interesting too, because, when you talk about how you identify yourselves in terms of where you're licensed to practice law, something brand new, something I read this week, there was a matter in Florida, the law firm Kennedy CMK, which had been, had a grievance filed against them because they had basically listed attorneys saying that they could work on Florida matters. And they were not licensed in the state of Florida. Okay, so it's as simple as that. All right, it's a law firm website. They say they can handle your matters in Florida, and you don't have and the attorneys that you list aren't licensed there, or you don't have licensed attorneys there. So now in this case, I would assume, or I would guess, educated wise, that they were a first offender, right, in this kind of thing. And so they basically went and said, oh my God, I didn't know. And they made all the changes and fixed it. And then, basically the grievance was just recently dropped this week. But it is a good example of, when you put stuff up online, and you identify yourself as, being able to handle a matter in a particular place, you better have a license, and you better be barred there.
And people are watching. And it's usually other lawyers.
It is usually other lawyers. So, right, it's like 0.1%, is it a consumer who files the grievance? Most of the time it's going to be other lawyers, competitors, right? Like it's going to be competitors. In some cases you have, the non-friendly state bars, which are proactive and being aggressive and looking for violations. And then the area that's really kind of taken off tremendously over the last few years are, often against plaintiffs' firms or defense firms that are looking at the solicitation rules and looking for violations and calling out the plaintiff's firm in front of the judge, whether it's to try to get you knocked out or try to get you dinged. It's a huge piece now. It's often I'm looking at the advertising and concerning myself whether, how is a defense firm going to use some of this to their advantage or for their advantage. So you want to pay attention. In April of 2022, the ABA opinion 501 on solicitation is a good one to look at.
Yep. We do have some information here too about reciprocity. As I mentioned, not cheap, not easy. Usually requires a fair amount of time being there. I wouldn't recommend that as a way to easily practice somewhere. There are some weird multi-jurisdictional practice issues. I see some lawyer trust account issues, or client trust account issues, some states call it. Your IOLTA. This can be really tricky because even if you're authorized, it doesn't mean necessarily that the banks know you're authorized. So sometimes you have to actually get permission from the bar. Sometimes the bar says, sure, you can have an office here, but you can't actually have an account here. So I have, some lawyers that are practicing out of the country, and they have to have a bona fide office in New York and an IOLTA account in New York, even though it doesn't make any sense. And they come back from, UK just to handle their money sometimes. Death, disability, and disappearance, I will just emphasize for you. All of us know that we need a succession plan. Few of us ever actually have one. If you are a multi-jurisdictional practitioner, you need it more than ever, because that bar where you're actually practicing, if you're not licensed there, has no obligation or interest in helping you if something terrible happens to you. And then every once in a while, I see NOAA jurisdiction apparently applies, and that can be really hard. with the 8.5. We have a few questions. Let's see. I thought this one sounded really interesting. I am licensed in New York, but living in a different state. I do not say anywhere that I am practicing the law of the state in which I live. I maintain New York office. I do not intend to avail myself of the courts of the state in which I live, nor do I hold myself out as an attorney of this state. Is it going to be possible one day for me to live in my state without fear that I will be tagged as practicing without a license here? What do you think?
Is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? No, right? So, I always say, Charity gave that example of, doing something in her kitchen, right? Like, I don't think any bar association is going to show up at your door peeping through her kitchen window to see if she's got a laptop open. And so it really is a matter of, of how you present yourself and whether you put it out there in a way that makes it look, let's say, for example, let's say you live in, I don't know, let's make up a place. Let's say you live in Rhode Island, right? And so maybe now you're in Rhode Island and you start going to your kids' soccer games and you start talking to parents on the sideline. They start talking to you about what you do. And you say, I'm a lawyer and I do X, Y, and Z. And they go, well, that's interesting because I have this matter, right? Like, you wouldn't think about like, oh my God, I'm engaged now in the unauthorized practice of law. I'm only licensed in New York. But that's probably kind of the type of scenario that could come up that could be problematic. But again, if you, I don't want to say lay low, but it's really a matter of whether, are you going to create a situation where you take a penny out of a lawyer's pocket in that state? And if the answer is no, I would think that in the overall scheme of things, you'd be okay. But also,
and I do think the level of contentiousness of the practice area and who might be, doing it matters.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. Someone asked about what about if they took the bar before the UBE? You can always take the UBE again if you want to. But I think probably if you've had a license for a while, you might be looking at reciprocity as a possibility. Just realize sometimes it takes a long time. You need sometimes 5 to 7 years of practice in the area. You have to show it can't be like some states don't allow it to be part-time. Certain states have reciprocity with other ones, but not many others. It's a talk about patchwork. It's complicated. Have either of you seen commentary or comments to the rule on unauthorized practice that says something about helping someone represent themselves being excluded? Ooh, that's a good question. I would suggest looking at the limited scope representation rules. And those are scattered in different parts of the ethics rules. Sometimes it's 1.14 a little bit, but that one is, no.
You know what? You might know, you'd know better than me, but in that kind of a situation, are you making an appearance? Do you put your bar license number down?
It depends on the state. And I'm thinking of the federal ones, which the limited scope representation requires them to do a different form that says, I'm not the attorney of record, this person's pro se, essentially, but you still are signing on as I've helped them prepare and ghostwrite this. I think it was very clear, at least to Ethics Council federally, that was still the practice of law. And that actually lawyers could not be just preparers. They brought a suit against Northwest Justice Project for that. And that was their position, that lawyers could not be simply preparers, even though somebody that didn't have a law degree could. Puts us in a real bind.
Yeah, let me add, as I read these questions, these are our personal opinions. They're not legal advice, and they don't represent anything official for Charity or myself. Because, again, a lot of them are, one thing I often tell people about the ethics practice, and, it's probably true in a lot of places, but it's very subjective, right? Like our opinions are very subjective. And, so the way I answer a question might be very different from the way another ethics lawyer answers the exact same question. And to me, like I operate in the, I always tell people I operate in the real world, right? Like I operate in the real world. I don't sit there and think, what if? And so, so that's what most of us need to do is, function in ways that, I'm often trying to minimize, any problems that I try to minimize the possibility of a grievance, the possibility of giving the defense counsel, ammunition, I'm looking at things in that way, in that capacity. So, so a lot of the questions that I see up here, again, it comes down to, ask yourself this, if the state bar or the court or opposing counsel, if they knew what I was doing, would I be in trouble, right? Like that's the way I look at it, at a couple of these questions, right? Like, and so you got to be smart about it, and you got to ask yourself that question, like, and you do have to look at the specific state. Like every state's very different, and as Charity said, things change by the day. Something that I tell you today might not be true tomorrow. I know that goes for everything, but you really have to pay attention. A lot of states, it kind of there's an ebb and flow to attorneys that are on certain, grievance committees or disciplinary boards, the Supreme Court judges of various states, the people that are presidents of the state boards. They come in and they have their pet projects or their pet peeves, and all of a sudden, what was good yesterday isn't good today, and might change tomorrow as well. So you really need to look at the specifics. Like I'm looking at some of these questions that are very specific to states. I'm in California. I'm in Minnesota. Like I'd always say, if you were my client, like I'm like, okay, well, I got to go look at Minnesota, right? I got to go look at Minnesota. I got to go look at California. I've got to go look at, this question. One of the
Every
questions
time.
deals with VLP in Minnesota. I would have to go see, what the VLP attitude is in that state and what ethics opinions there are. So you really need to be specific by the state.
And one person asked about whether or not if they're on vacation and a client asks a question by email, can they technically even answer the question? And that's a great example of it depends on the state whether or not that would be considered the unauthorized practice of law. The state that they're from, but more importantly, probably the state that they are in. Now, if you're out of the country, I bet you're fine. But if you're in the U.S., don't do it in Missouri.
And there's a question. I know we're out of time, but there's a question here dealing with Delaware. And again, Delaware is very provincial, very, they're very strict. The way the chancery operates, the way the courts operate there, the way the bar operates there. Like, if you, don't go playing in Delaware if you don't have a Delaware license, or, that's one of those states you just don't want to play around in. And again, that lends itself back again to the concept of competition. One thing that I wanted to get to, and I want to just throw it out real fast. Like one of the things going on in New Jersey right now is basically a prohibition on New Jersey trial lawyers paying a referral fee to out-of-state lawyers. That's like a big thing right now going on in the state. And again, it lends itself to turf and economics, and it's kind of crazy, but it's really kind of about who gets that 1/3 of the money, right, or who gets that percentage of the pot, and whether or not you can keep it in New Jersey and not have to send it off to the lawyer who sent it to you from Pennsylvania. So all these things that come into play. Again, it's a rapidly changing area, and again, we'll see. Maybe more people will be like Arizona, right? And in terms of the approach they take.
Let's hope, because I want you all to be able to drive. I believe that all of you can do legal research skillfully. Any state that you are in, you won't know those little funny nuances. That's what they say is the big problem, but I don't believe it. I think we're moving in the right direction. I believe we'll see change.
So if we
Micah,
didn't
not so
answer,
much.
yeah, if we didn't answer your question, you see our email address is up there. Feel free to give us a shout. I might not want to put my answer in writing now that I think about it, but but certainly feel free to ask us. Again, it's a great area, and it's an area that impacts everyone, and really it's a matter of kind of trying to play within the rules, right? That's what we all try to do when it comes to law practice.
And a great solution for this too, if you're really worried, is you can get an ethics opinion from an ethics lawyer, and I have good references for those. So feel free to contact me, and I can set you up with someone.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did enjoy it, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more videos on law practice and legal marketing. See you in our next clip.